3 out of 3 for Max Verstappen. Was there any doubt? From RacingNews365.com, my name is Nick Golding, and I'm joined as always by lead editor Ian Parks. Ian, we spoke yesterday about qualifying being the time when we're finally going to see maybe Ferrari against Red Bull, Leclerc against Verstappen. Instead, it was once again the Verstappen show. Should we even be surprised anymore?
No, not really. It was imperious. I mean, we got a great qualifying battle for the first Q1 and Q2, first 2 sessions, and it really did look like it was going to ramp up going into Q3, that we were going to be going for that battle. Sorry, folks, I've got a little bit of laryngitis coming on. My wife's had it all week, and she's passed it on to me, so my voice is starting to go. So please bear with me. Yeah, just wonderful from Max Verstappen, wonderful from Red Bull. That RB20 is just a rocket ship. As I say, those first 2 sessions, absolutely hammer and tongs between Ferrari and Red Bull. And I really did think, yes, this is it. We've got a great qualifying Q3 coming up. And that first lap from Max, and he puts it nearly 0.3 of a second quicker than anybody else. It was just like, whoa, just pulled it out of the bag. But Carlos Sainz, wow, as well. Just 2 weeks ago, he was lying in a hospital bed pretty much, having undergone appendix surgery. You know, he's talked about the wonders of modern medicine. He's talked about himself being an athlete, so recovery time is completely different for you or I if we'd have undergone a similar procedure.
Lucky
I get
them.
that. Exactly. And I get that. But even so, to go from where he was 2 weeks ago in Saudi Arabia to coming within 0.3 of a second, just double check that. Just looking at my stats here. Yeah, nearly 0.3 of a second of getting pole on the front row. Just brilliant performance from him to out-qualify Charles as well. That was the big surprise for me. Actually, that was along with Lewis not making it into Q3, although we'll get onto that in a minute because you predicted it.
I did predict it.
To out-qualify, but for him to out-qualify Charles, I didn't see that coming. I fully expected Charles to be on the front row, if not on pole position, given his performance.
Is that perhaps, given the circumstances of Sainz having had surgery so recently, that's possibly almost story of the day almost, because Leclerc has looked on it all weekend?
I would suggest so. And alongside just Mercedes, that car, I mean, Toto Wolff has said it post-session, they're struggling. I mean, 3rd year in a row now that they haven't got a grip on these regulations. We expected so much more. We've discussed this, you and I, previously, about Mercedes.
Only yesterday.
Exactly. Coming into this season, new spec of car, they changed the chassis, they believed, it was going to be more responsive for Lewis because he'd asked for changes at the start of last year. They weren't made. He complained many, many times over the course of last season that he wasn't listened to. Well, guess what? They've listened to him. They brought a car that they expected to be more to his liking, and they still can't get the performance out of it. Wow. I mean, you called it. You said he wouldn't make.
I said it. I said
it. You did say that was one of your predictions yesterday. So well done, you.
Thank you.
But it's...
Do you think, though, with Mercedes, the fact that this is now even more concerning, because actually Albert Park last season was one of their stronger venues. All of a sudden this season, they've not really shown pace anywhere, and it's 3 very different style of circuits we've had this season. Do you think we're starting to see maybe more and more actually why Lewis has gone to Ferrari, not just for the paycheck, but actually because Mercedes do have, seemingly with these regulations, fundamental issues?
I've always wondered the fact that he jumped so soon, apart from being lured by the allure of Ferrari and one last hurrah before he does retire. That storied name of the Scuderia. But I've always suspected that he will have seen something in the development of this car over the winter that he's thought, nah, I just can't see it. And he will know as well that whatever happens this season, it's going to be the carryover into next season, because there's going to be virtually zero development on next year's car because everything will be geared towards 2026. So he's probably looked at it and thought, well, I don't see myself winning this year. I'm not going to win this year. I'm not going to win next year. So, as I say, I think he saw something over the winter, and that's why he jumped so soon. Because that was, you got to think, that was a massive surprise for him to jump so quickly with another year remaining on his contract, or having only signed a new contract. So
the thing is,
last year.
I don't think Hamilton moving, I think, wasn't just a shock for us. I think actually so many of the drivers across so many categories, not just F1, were caught massively by. I spoke to Jake Dennis and Nick DeVries last weekend in Sao Paulo. They were both shocked that Hamilton has switched. They both thought he'd retire at Mercedes, which is, I think, what a lot of us thought as well. So it shows just how much this move has caught everyone by surprise. And already we're 3 rounds in, and more it's looking like actually this could be another masterclass of a decision by Hamilton. Let's go on though, because yes, one of my predictions came right, was true. So was one of yours, a Mr. Oscar Piastri.
Somewhat fortuitous, it has to be said.
You know what? It's correct.
But this is Formula One. It is correct. At the end of the day, I got it right. I did say Oscar top 5, and he will start 5th place on the grid because Sergio Perez has taken a 3-place grid drop.
Naughty boy.
So very impeding. Just one of those that sometimes happens. He's done reasonably well, Checo. What was he?
He was 3rd, so he's now obviously going to be 6th.
He was 3rd, but then you look at the time difference to Max again, and it was I'm just looking at the timing screen there. I've got the times up to my right-hand side here, and it's 1/3 of a second difference. I mean, okay, he's doing the job that you would expect as a Red Bull number 2 driver, but 1/3 of a second. If Red Bull know that they can get performance out of one driver in that car, imagine what they could do with a stellar number 2. And Checo, for me, he's not a stellar number 2. He's a steady number 2 rather than a stellar number 2. But that's in many respects, that's all the team's going to want, isn't it?
Exactly. But in saying that, obviously, one of the big talking points this season is, who's going to replace Checo next season if he's not given a new contract. Obviously, a lot of people think Daniel Ricciardo. However, his bad start to the season has continued, or potentially Carlos Sainz. But if you look at who Red Bull have on the books, obviously they've got Tsunoda, Q3, once again, a stellar performance, then Ricciardo at his home race. P18, surely, that, fairy tale reunion is just looking, bleaker by the second.
Further and further apart. Yeah, I know, that's not great from Daniel. And he will know it as well. I mean, this is his home track. I mean, this one is going to really hurt. Really hurt. He to run wide. I mean, I watched it and I thought, he's gone wide there. And sure enough, the lap was deleted because he'd made it into Q2. And you thought, okay, reasonable, fair enough. But I did see that he'd run wide. And he's just, I thought at the end of last season, yeah, Daniel's back. He's got a good car underneath him. He's happy with that car. Was performing at certain tracks, not performing at others, but AlphaTauri, as it was then, seemed to be doing all the right things. And obviously with this greater reliance with Red Bull coming into this season, the expectation was, both seemingly within the team as well to a certain extent, but certainly from us on the outside looking in, that RB, I don't know what you want to call them, whatever name you want to give them, RB, we're calling him RB on our site, we're really going to be towards the front of that midfield. Yuki Tsunoda is edging towards the front of that midfield without a shadow of a doubt. Daniel Ricciardo right now is at the back of that midfield. He has got a lot of work to do over the remainder of this season. And I wouldn't even say the remainder of this season. I think he's got to show something over these next handful of races. Certainly before the summer break, without a shadow of a doubt, before the summer break, he has got to prove himself in that car. Whatever's not going right for him, he's got to sort out, and fast. Because at this rate, as you've pointed out, that position that he so desperately wants next season to be alongside Max at Red Bull is just not going to happen. And the driver that, as I've just mentioned, is really bringing himself into contention for that seat is Carlos Sainz. Could be a battle between Mercedes and Red Bull to get Carlos's signature next season. Who knows? Another fascinating tussle between that.
Makes for a good silly season story. Let's move on to...
why not?
Let's move on to a bit of a weird talking point, because obviously the big thing yesterday was Williams withdrawing Logan Sargeant. Obviously, they didn't have a spare tub after Alex Albon's pretty nasty crash, actually. The team made a decision to effectively give Sargeant's tub to Albon so they can continue in the Grand Prix. We've seen it to Albon, I've seen to Q2. So, first of all, do you think that's proven they've made the right call? Because P12 for Albon, it's almost Q3, and he's got a chance at points tomorrow potentially.
Yeah, obviously this is one of those topics that we started to discuss yesterday, and then obviously not long after
5 minutes after.
Not long after the announcement came out, we were unable to do a re-record, so apologies for that, folks, if you watched any of that yesterday. And we're thinking, we already know about that. Well, we did put a little bit of an edit into it to try and bring it up to date at least. For me, it was absolutely the right call, as hard as it seems on Logan Sargeant, but you've got to go with the driver that you have the utmost belief and faith in. And obviously for Williams, that is Alex Albon. And he did a very good job. Whereas, he's going to start 12 tomorrow. Not too far off. Place in Q3, not massively far away. Would Logan have got it any further? I think Logan might have got out of Q1. I think. Would he have got it any higher up the grid than Alex? Maybe not. I think from 12th position, Alex has got a real good shot of a top 10 finish, because we know what the circuit is like. If he can keep his nose clean and stay out of trouble, that's the main thing with Albert Park. It's that's going to be another cracking race tomorrow, I've no doubt about that. But with regard to Alex, as I say, he's my pick for a top 10 finish. Keeps his nose clean, and I think if he brings home points, then James Fowles and the rest of the team can hold their hands up and say, look, we made the right call here. What it says about Logan Sargeant, though, that's the bigger talking point for me, because if you don't have faith in your number 2 driver, then did you make the right call in actually hiring him or rehiring him for a new contract this season? If he was a complete rookie coming into this one, then absolutely no-brainer with Alex. But the fact that Logan's got a year underneath and he was given that extra contract for this year as well, that's going to hurt. Like with Daniel, that's going to hurt for Logan. The fact that he's sat on the sidelines. Fascinating to watch. I mean, it's a throwback to the 50s, isn't it? Where a driver replaces another driver, takes over the other driver's car.
Before my time, I'll be honest.
Yeah. Apparently, I've heard that the chassis had a hole in it big enough that you could put your finger through. That's now got to go back to Grove, the factory, Williams factory, to be repaired. And I understand that's actually going to then make its way to Japan, where their team will again be without a spare chassis. This is how tight things are getting for some of these teams with regards to the budget and what they can do with the money and how much they've got left over to try and bring these spares. No spare chassis again for Japan for Williams. So that's, again, Logan and Alex at that circuit, which we know one small mistake and you're in a barrier or a wall, going to be almost tiptoeing around Suzuka to ensure that they don't do another £500,000 worth of damage. That's what this incident has cost Williams. £500,000. Unbelievable.
And that's without taking into consideration the unpredictable weather we typically get at Suzuka. It's funny you mentioned there, though, about spare parts, because that's another talking point today. Zhou Guanyu, obviously out in Q1, had a bizarre incident where his front wing end plate broke. He wasn't not even on a hot lap at turn 10 due to vibrations caused by the curb. A corner which has caught out the biggest names in the sport this weekend. He's actually starting from the pit lane tomorrow because Stake don't have a spare front wing of the same spec. Because they've now returned to a previous spec front wing for tomorrow's race, he's got to start from the pit lane. Do you think this just highlights how much the teams are pushing to try and, have that edge in the lower midfield, but actually then are being forced to not necessarily forget that they haven't got the budget for spare parts of the same specification?
It's clearly quite a struggle for some of these teams. And as you say, the bottom line is, when you think of the money differential between finishing P6, P7 to P9, P10, is significant for these guys, especially going into this new regulatory area that we've got coming up in 2026. Every single penny is going to count, because that's when their budgets are going to be extremely squeezed. So you can understand why these teams, excuse me, are struggling to bring the spare parts. But I mean, a wing, okay, important, but not as important as not having a spare chassis like at Williams. That's proved enormously costly for that team in particular right now. But yes, it is a clear indicator that everything is so tight at the back because the margins are so small, but the gains are so big when you think about the money that can be earned because of the Constructors' Championship placings.
Well, I can hear your voice starting to go. So let's wrap this up. Bold predictions for tomorrow. I'm going to go Oscar Piastri podium. You mentioned Albon for points. Is that how bold you're going to go?
It's not. It doesn't sound very bold, does it? But when you look at the grid, it's trying to pick something out of that.
Yeah.
I mean, could we go like a Yuki Tsunoda top 5 to really underline RB's potential? That'd be quite interesting.
Well, I think that's what you need to go with. I reckon that's a Yuki.
I think your
top
Oscar's
5.
An interesting one, because that means he's got to finish ahead of Lando and Charles. He's got to get ahead of his own teammate and Charles Leclerc. And we know that Ferrari's really good in straight line speed, and he's got good race pace as well. So that's quite a bold call from you. Mine's not so bold, I agree. Albon top 10. And maybe Yuki top 5. There we go. There's our predictions, guys. What do you reckon, folks out there? Let us know.
So let us know in the comment section what you think will happen tomorrow. And of course, if you want to find out, make sure you're tuning into Racing News 365's Formula One content tomorrow. We will be on the live blog bright and early, so make sure you are tuning into that. Ian, amazing as always. From the entire team at Racing News 365, we will see you tomorrow. Ian, go rest up.
Thank you, mate. Join us tomorrow, folks. Take care till then.
See you later.